Angela Bledsoe case, a real incident that raised attention. Night Angela Bledsoe disappeared did not feel unusual in any obvious way, which is perhaps what makes this case so deeply unsettling. It wasn't a stormy night. There were no power outages, no reports of suspicious activity in the area, nothing that would make anyone pause and think that something terrible was about to happen. Angela had gone about her routine just like she always did, finishing her work, returning home, and settling into the quiet comfort of her apartment. But sometimes, the most disturbing stories don't begin with chaos. They begin with silence. The kind of silence that hides something waiting to unfold. Angela was the kind of person people described as normal in the best sense of the word. She kept a steady routine, paid her bills on time, stayed connected with a few close friends, and avoided unnecessary drama. She wasn't someone who attracted attention or created conflict. Her life was predictable, stable, and grounded. That's why, when her name started circulating as part of a missing person case, it didn't make sense to anyone who knew her. There was no clear reason for her to disappear, and no sign that she was planning to leave. On the evening before she vanished, Angela sent a message that would later become one of the most important and chilling details in the investigation. She told a friend that she felt uneasy. Not scared exactly, but uncomfortable, like something wasn't right. She didn't explain further, and at the time, it didn't seem urgent enough to question. People have moments like that all the time, feelings they can't explain, instincts they ignore. But in hindsight, that message feels different. It feels like a warning that no one understood as the night went on. A few neighbors later recalled hearing strange, almost unnoticeable sounds coming from Angela's apartment. Not loud enough to suggest a clear disturbance, but unusual enough to stand out in memory after the fact. Soft thuds, faint footsteps, and what one person described as a kind of restless movement, like someone pacing back and forth for hours without stopping. At the time, no one acted on it. In a building full of people, small noises are easy to ignore. But when those sounds are connected to someone who disappears, they become something else entirely. The next morning, when Angela didn't show up for work, it raised the first real alarm. She wasn't someone who missed work without notice. Calls to her phone went unanswered. Messages remained unread, and as the hours passed, concern grew into fear. By the evening, her family had contacted authorities, and a missing person report was officially filed. What began as a simple welfare check quickly turned into something much more serious. When police entered her apartment, they expected to find at least some sign of what had happened, some indication that could point them in a direction. But instead, they found something far more disturbing. Nothing. Everything appeared normal. Her belongings were still in place, her personal items untouched, her daily life frozen exactly where it had been left. There were no signs of forced entry, no evidence of a struggle, no immediate clues. It was as if Angela had simply ceased to exist within that space. But one detail stood out in a way that investigators couldn't ignore. The mirror in her bedroom was cracked, not shattered outward, not broken by an external force, but fractured in a way that suggested pressure from the inside. It was a small detail, but one that didn't fit the rest of the scene. There was no clear explanation for how it happened, and no evidence linking it to a specific event. Still, it lingered in the minds of everyone who saw it. As the investigation progressed, authorities explored every possible angle. They looked into her personal life, her work environment, her social connections, searching for any sign of conflict or motive. They reviewed nearby CCTV footage, interviewed neighbors, and analyzed the apartment for forensic evidence. But nothing pointed to a clear conclusion. No suspicious individuals were identified, no timeline could be firmly established, and no physical evidence suggested how she might have left the apartment as news of the case spread. It quickly gained attention beyond the local community. People began discussing it online, sharing theories, analyzing details, and trying to make sense of a situation that didn't follow any familiar pattern. The lack of evidence only fueled the speculation. Some believed it was a carefully planned abduction, while others focused on the psychological aspects of her final message. And then there were those who couldn't ignore the strange, almost unexplainable details. Weeks passed without progress, and the case began to lose momentum in official channels. Without new evidence or leads, investigations naturally slowed down. But for the public, and especially for Angela's family, the questions didn't fade. If anything, they grew louder. How could someone disappear from a locked apartment without leaving a trace? How could there be no witnesses, no footage, no sign of movement? Then, unexpectedly, a small but significant detail brought the case back into focus. A security camera from a nearby building showed a figure standing near Angela's window on the night she disappeared. The footage was grainy, unclear, and frustratingly limited, but it was something. A presence, a possibility. The figure didn't move much, didn't reveal any clear features, but its existence raised a critical question. Was someone watching her that night? Despite renewed interest and further investigation, the figure was never identified. No one came forward. No additional footage clarified the situation. Once again, the case reached a dead end, leaving behind only fragments of possibility and a growing sense of unease. Angela's family refused to let the case be forgotten. They continued to speak publicly, sharing her story, hoping that anyone might have information that could lead to answers. Their persistence kept the case alive in discussions, even as official progress slowed. For them, this wasn't just an unsolved mystery. It was a missing piece of their lives that demanded closure. Experts who later reviewed the case often described it as highly unusual, even rare. The combination of a locked environment, lack of evidence, and unexplained details didn't align with typical cases. It challenged standard investigative approaches and left even experienced professionals without clear answers. Today, the disappearance of Angela Bledsoe remains unresolved. No confirmed sightings, no breakthroughs, no definitive explanation. Just silence and the unsettling realization that sometimes the truth exists just beyond reach, hidden in there. Details we can't fully understand, because somewhere, somehow, something happened that night, and until that truth is found, this case will continue to haunt those who hear. If this story kept you thinking or gave you chills, don't forget to like the video, share it with others, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. And for more real, dark, and mysterious cases, make sure to subscribe to Obscure Files, because some stories are too disturbing to ever be forgotten.